The alarm bells rang through the galactic monitoring station Kepler-7 at exactly 3:47 in the morning, Galactic Standard Time. Senior Scanner Vex-High lifted his 4 eyes from his coffee cup and looked at the blinking red lights on his control panel. His long blue fingers moved quickly across the buttons as he tried to figure out what was happening. Vex-High had been working at this job for 23 years. He was a Xanthari, a race known for being very careful and precise. His people had 4 eyes that could see many different types of light, making them perfect for scanning deep space. In all his years of work, he had never seen readings like this. The main screen showed a picture of the Xerian Nebula, a huge cloud of colorful gas and dust that stretched across several light-years of space. Most of the nebula was beautiful, but harmless. However, at its center was something that made every species in the galaxy afraid: the Forbidden Zone. The Forbidden Zone was exactly what its name suggested. Nobody was allowed to go there. Any ship that tried to enter was destroyed within minutes. The ancient machines that guarded the zone had been there for thousands of years, left behind by a mysterious race called the Progenitors. These machines did not care who you were or why you wanted to enter. They simply destroyed everything that came too close. But now, according to his instruments, there was something impossible sitting right in the middle of the Forbidden Zone. Vex-High ran the scan 3 more times, checking every setting and calibration. The results were always the same. There was a ship in the Forbidden Zone, not just any ship, but a human ship. Vex-High had met humans before. They were a young species that had only joined galactic society about 100 years ago. They were small, soft creatures with only 2 eyes and no natural weapons or special abilities. Their technology was basic compared to most other races. They could not even travel faster than light without using the relay gates that other species had built for them. The idea that a human ship could survive in the Forbidden Zone was like saying that a paper airplane could fly through a hurricane and come out perfectly fine. Vex-High called his supervisor immediately. Within minutes, Captain Zethara of the hegemony warship Inevitable Justice was looking at the same impossible readings. Captain Zethara was a Saurian, a race that looked somewhat like the ancient dinosaurs from Earth. She had green scales, sharp teeth, and yellow eyes that missed nothing. "This has to be a mistake," Captain Zethara said, her clawed fingers tapping on her command chair. "Run every test you have. Check for sensor errors, equipment failure, anything that could explain this. But no matter how many tests they ran, the answer was always the same. There was definitely a human ship sitting in the Forbidden Zone, and somehow it was still in one piece. The ship was sending out a weak distress signal, the kind that meant the crew was still alive but in serious trouble. The signal was definitely human. It used their language and their communication protocols. The ship's computer systems were still working, which meant the hull had not been breached. Word of the discovery spread quickly through the monitoring station. Soon, every important person in the sector knew about it. The news caused panic among some species and disbelief among others. How could humans, of all races, survive where even the mighty hegemony battle fleets feared to go? Dr. Korthak, a senior scientist from the Hegemony Science Division, arrived at the station 6 hours later. He was an old Saurian with many scars from his years of dangerous research. He had studied progenitor artifacts for most of his life, and knew more about them than almost anyone else in the galaxy. "Show me everything," Dr. Korthak demanded as he looked at the scan results. His yellow eyes grew wide as he read the data. "This should not be possible. The energy fields in that zone tear apart matter at the atomic level. Nothing survives. There. Nothing." The human ship was called the Lucky Break, according to its identification beacon. It was a simple cargo freighter, the kind used for moving goods between planets. The ship was about 200 years old by human standards, which made it ancient and unreliable by galactic standards. Its hull showed damage from what looked like weapon strikes, but the ship was still holding together, More disturbing was what the deep scans revealed about the Forbidden Zone itself. The ancient progenitor machines that guarded the area were still active, but they seemed to be ignoring the human ship. These machines had destroyed hegemony battlecruisers without hesitation, yet they let a tiny human freighter sit there undisturbed. Captain Zethara tried to contact the human ship directly, but the interference from the Forbidden Zone made communication impossible. All they could hear was static mixed with fragments of human voices calling for help. As news of the discovery reached the highest levels of galactic government, emergency meetings were called on a dozen different worlds. The Galactic Council had spent centuries maintaining the blockade around progenitor sites like the Forbidden Zone. The idea that humans could somehow bypass these ancient defenses was terrifying to many species. Some council members suggested that the humans had secretly developed new technology that could defeat progenitor weapons. Others believed it was impossible, and that the whole thing was some kind of trick or illusion. A few worried voices suggested something much worse, that humans might be connected to the progenitors in ways nobody understood. Back at the monitoring station, Vex High continued watching the human ship through his instruments. Every few hours, the lucky break would move slightly, as if it was drifting in some invisible current. But there were no energy readings that could explain the movement. It was as if the ship was being gently guided by forces that did not show up on any scanner. The most frightening part was that the progenitor machines in the Forbidden Zone were becoming more active. Energy readings throughout the nebula were increasing, and some of the ancient structures were powering up systems that had been dormant for thousands of years. It was as if the presence of the human ship was waking something up. Dr. Korthak spent hours studying every piece of data they had about humans. Their biology was unremarkable. They had no psychic powers, no natural resistance to radiation, no special genetic traits that would explain their survival. They were, by all scientific measures, one of the most ordinary species in the galaxy. Yet, here was their ship, sitting safely in a place where the most advanced civilizations could not go. As the hours passed, more ships arrived at the monitoring station. Scientists, military officers, and government officials from a dozen species came to see the impossible sight for themselves. The small monitoring station became the center of the greatest mystery the galaxy had seen in centuries. The human ship continued to drift in the Forbidden Zone, its crew waiting for rescue that might never come. And in the depths of space around them, ancient machines that had slept for millennia began to stir, responding to signals that no living being could detect or understand. Something was happening in the Forbidden Zone, something that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans, progenitors, and the true history of the stars. News of the human ship in the Forbidden Zone reached the galactic hegemony capital within 12 hours. Fleet Admiral Korthak, one of the most respected military leaders in the galaxy, received the report while reviewing battle plans for a different crisis. When he read the initial data, he thought someone was playing a joke on him. Admiral Korthak was an old Saurian warrior who had fought in 3 major galactic wars. He had seen impossible things before, but this was beyond impossible. He immediately called for an emergency meeting of the Galactic Defense Council. The council chamber was a massive room that could hold representatives from dozens of different species. Within hours, ships were arriving from across the galaxy carrying scientists, military experts, and government officials. Everyone wanted to understand how humans had achieved what no other species could do. Dr. Lissa Andra arrived on the fastest ship she could find. She was an ethereal, a race of beings who looked like they were made of glowing mist. Ethereals were known for being the galaxy's best scientists, especially when it came to studying ancient technology. Dr. Lysiandra had spent her entire life studying the progenitors and their mysterious artifacts. "This changes everything we know," Dr. Lysiandra told the assembled council members. Her form flickered with nervous energy as she spoke. "The Forbidden Zone is not just dangerous. It is actively hostile to life. The progenitor machines there do not simply destroy ships. They tear apart the very fabric of space and time itself. She brought up holographic displays showing the energy patterns from various progenitor sites across the galaxy. Each site showed the same thing: massive energy fields that could unmake matter at the quantum level. No known technology could protect against these weapons. Every probe we have sent into progenitor sites has been destroyed, Dr. Lysandra continued. The machines do not just shoot at intruders. They seem to rewrite the laws of physics in the local area, making it impossible for normal matter to exist there. General Thexvar, the military representative from the Christek Union, asked the question everyone was thinking. So, how are the humans still alive? Dr. Lysandra's form dimmed with uncertainty. I do not know. By all our understanding of progenitor technology, their ship should have been destroyed the moment it entered the zone. The fact that it survived suggests either our understanding is completely wrong or humans possess some quality we have never detected. The Council began reviewing everything they knew about humans. The species had been discovered about 100 years ago when their radio signals were detected by a routine patrol. First contact had been peaceful, and humans had been welcomed into galactic society as junior members. Humans came from a planet called Earth in a small star system near the edge of the galaxy. Their world was unremarkable, not too hot, not too cold, with plenty of water and a normal atmosphere. The humans themselves seemed equally ordinary. They had no psychic abilities, no natural armor or weapons, and no unusual resistance to radiation or energy fields. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards. They had only recently learned to travel between stars, and even then they needed to use the relay gates built by other species. Their weapons were basic projectile and energy systems that would be useless against any serious military force. Yet, somehow, a simple human cargo ship was sitting unharmed in the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Xenobiologist Kethvar presented his analysis of human biology to the Council. Kethvar was an insectoid, a race that looked like giant intelligent ants. His species was known for their detailed scientific methods and careful research. Humans are biologically unremarkable, Kethvar reported, his antenna twitching as he spoke. Their DNA follows standard patterns found in many species. Their brain structure is typical for a thinking species. Their cellular composition shows no unusual properties. There is nothing in their biology that would explain survival in a progenitor zone. The Council spent hours debating possible explanations. Some suggested that humans might have secret technology they had hidden from the galaxy. Others proposed that the readings were wrong and the ship was actually some kind of advanced hologram or illusion. A few Council members suggested something more disturbing, that humans might be descended from the progenitors themselves. This idea was quickly dismissed because humans showed no signs of advanced technology or knowledge. If they were related to the progenitors, they would surely know how to use progenitor artifacts. Meanwhile, at the monitoring station, attempts to contact the human ship continued to fail. The energy interference from the Forbidden Zone blocked all communication attempts. Long-range scanners could detect life signs aboard the ship. At least 3 or 4 humans were still alive. But there was no way to talk to them or learn what had happened. Every probe sent toward the Forbidden Zone was destroyed within minutes of crossing the boundary. The progenitor defenses worked exactly as they always had, tearing apart anything that approached. Yet the human ship remained untouched. Dr. Lysandra requested permission to bring her most advanced scanning equipment to the monitoring station. She wanted to study the energy patterns around the human ship in detail. Perhaps there was something unique about that particular area of the Forbidden Zone. The Void Walkers also sent a representative, which surprised everyone. The Void Walkers were an ancient and mysterious species that rarely showed interest in anything. They lived in the empty spaces between stars and only contacted other species when something truly important was happening. Their presence meant this situation was more serious than anyone realized. The Voidwalker representative was called Silent Song, which was the closest translation their language had to a name. Like all Voidwalkers, Silent Song appeared as a dark shape that seemed to absorb light. When Silent Song spoke, it was through a mechanical translator that turned their thoughts into words other species could understand. "The humans have touched something that should not be touched," Silent Song said to the assembled scientists. "The old barriers weaken. The ancient guardians stir. This is not a rescue mission. This is the beginning of something much larger." Nobody asked Silent Song to explain what they meant. Voidwalkers never gave direct answers, and asking too many questions usually made them leave. As more experts arrived at the monitoring station, the situation became more tense. Several species began positioning military ships near the Forbidden Zone, claiming they were there to help with the rescue, but everyone knew they were really there to protect themselves if something went wrong. The human government on Earth was contacted about the situation. Human officials expressed concern for their missing citizens, but seemed as confused as everyone else about how their ship had survived in the Forbidden Zone. They insisted that the Lucky Break was carrying only normal cargo and had no special equipment or weapons. Dr. Korthak studied star charts showing the location of every known progenitor site in the galaxy. There were hundreds of them, scattered across dozens of star systems. All of them were heavily guarded and forbidden to everyone. If humans could somehow enter these sites safely, it would give them access to technology beyond imagination. The thought frightened many species. Humans were already expanding rapidly across the galaxy despite their primitive technology. If they gained access to progenitor artifacts, they could become the dominant species within a few generations. As the first day of the crisis ended, one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same. The discovery of the human ship had raised questions that challenged everything the major species thought they knew about themselves, about humans, and about the mysterious progenitors who had vanished so long ago. In the depths of the Forbidden Zone, the human ship continued to drift peacefully among forces that should have destroyed it instantly, and throughout the galaxy, ancient progenitor sites began showing increased energy readings, as if they were all responding to some signal that only they could detect. 3 days after the discovery of the human ship, Admiral Korthak made a decision that shocked the entire galaxy. Despite protests from dozens of species and direct orders from the Galactic Council to wait for more information, he authorized a rescue mission into the Forbidden Zone. The decision caused enormous controversy. Many species argued that risking valuable ships and trained crew members to save a few humans was foolish and wasteful. The Hegemony Council held emergency sessions demanding that the Admiral reconsider his order, but Admiral Korthak refused to change his mind. "We do not abandon people who need help," the Admiral announced during a heated council meeting. "Whether they are human, saurian, or any other species, we have a duty to attempt rescue when possible. Besides, we need to understand how they survived. This information could be vital to our understanding of progenitor technology." The truth was that Admiral Korthak had another reason for authorizing the mission. Reports were coming in from monitoring stations across the galaxy that progenitor sites everywhere were becoming more active. Ancient machines that had been silent for thousands of years were powering up. Energy readings were increasing at sites that had been dormant since before recorded history. Something about the human ship in the Forbidden Zone was causing a galaxy-wide reaction from progenitor technology. If this continued, it might trigger events that could threaten every living species. The Admiral believed they needed to understand what was happening before it was too late. Since the mission was officially unauthorized and extremely dangerous, Admiral Korthak could only ask for volunteers. To his surprise, he received more applications than he expected. Captain Zethara of the Warship Inevitable Justice volunteered immediately. She had been the first to receive the reports about the human ship, and her curiosity had grown stronger each day. Her ship was one of the most advanced in the fleet, equipped with the best shields and weapons available. Dr. Lysandra volunteered to take her research vessel, Deeper Understanding, on the mission. Her ship was not built for combat, but it carried the most sophisticated scanning equipment in the galaxy. If anyone could figure out how the humans were surviving, it would be her. The most surprising volunteer came from the Void Walkers. Silent, Song requested permission to accompany the mission in a small diplomatic ship. This was almost unprecedented. Void Walkers rarely involved themselves directly in the affairs of other species. Their participation meant they believed something of enormous importance was happening. The rescue fleet was small by necessity. Too many ships might trigger stronger responses from the progenitor defenses. The plan was simple: approach the Forbidden Zone carefully, locate the human ship, and attempt to either communicate with the crew or evacuate them. As the three ships prepared to depart, Dr. Lysandra briefed the mission teams on what they might encounter. Her holographic displays showed energy readings from the Forbidden Zone that made even experienced space travelers nervous. The progenitor machines do not operate by the same physical laws we understand, she explained to the assembled crews. They seem to exist partially outside normal space-time. Their weapons can target specific quantum signatures, meaning they can destroy one ship while leaving another completely unharmed. She paused to let this information sink in. We do not know why they are not attacking the human ship. This could mean they have classified humans as non-threatening, or it could mean something else entirely. We must be prepared for any possibility. The rescue fleet departed from the monitoring station exactly 72 hours after the human ship was first detected. As they traveled toward the Forbidden Zone, the crews noticed that space itself seemed different. Stars appeared to flicker and shift position slightly. Navigation equipment gave inconsistent readings. Several crew members reported strange dreams, even while awake. Senior scanner HFY, who had volunteered to join the mission aboard the Inevitable Justice, monitored his instruments carefully as they approached the zone boundary. What he saw made his 4 eyes widen with alarm. "Captain," HFY reported, "the human ship is moving." On the main display, the lucky break was indeed changing position, but not under its own power. The ship appeared to be drifting deeper into the nebula, drawn by forces that registered on no known sensors. Whatever controlled the Forbidden Zone was slowly pulling the human ship toward its center. "Increase speed," Captain Zethara ordered. "We need to reach them before they drift too far into the zone." As the rescue fleet approached the boundary of the Forbidden Zone, they followed strict protocols developed over centuries of studying. Progenitor sites. All weapons were powered down to minimal levels. Engines were set to produce the smallest possible energy signature. Communication systems were switched to passive mode only. The idea was to make themselves as unnoticeable as possible. Previous attempts to enter progenitor zones had failed because the defense systems detected ships and classified them as threats. By minimizing their energy output, the rescue fleet hoped to slip past the ancient guardians unnoticed. The boundary of the Forbidden Zone was marked by a wall of swirling energy that stretched across hundreds of kilometers. As the ships approached this barrier, every crew member held their breath. This was the point where so many other expeditions had been destroyed. The Inevitable Justice crossed the boundary first. Captain Zethara watched her instruments carefully, expecting alarms to sound at any moment, but nothing happened. The ship passed through the energy wall as if it was not there. Dr. Lysandra's research vessel followed, then Silent Song's diplomatic ship. All 3 vessels entered the Forbidden Zone without any reaction from the progenitor defenses. It was as if the ancient guardians had simply decided to ignore them. "This is impossible," Dr. Lysandra reported over the communication channel. "My instruments show that the defense systems are fully active. They should have detected us immediately. Something is protecting us." Inside the Forbidden Zone, the rescue fleet found themselves in a realm that seemed to exist outside normal physics. Space was filled with structures that appeared to be made of crystallized energy. Geometric patterns of light drifted through the void like living things. In the distance, massive progenitor installations hung in space, their purposes unknown and unknowable. The human ship was easier to locate now. Its metal hull stood out sharply against the ethereal background of the zone. As the rescue fleet approached, they could see that the Lucky Break was indeed badly damaged. Scorch marks covered its hull, and several sections showed signs of weapon impacts. But the ship was intact and still broadcasting its distress signal. Life support systems were functioning, and the crew was still alive inside. "Prepare boarding shuttles," Captain Zethara ordered. "We need to evacuate the human crew before something changes and the defenses decide to target us." As the rescue ships moved closer to the Lucky Break, Dr. Lysandra's instruments detected something that made her form flicker with excitement and fear. "Captain," she reported, "I am reading massive energy buildups throughout the zone. The progenitor installations are powering up systems that have been dormant for millennia. Whatever allowed us to enter safely, it appears to be triggering a much larger response." Throughout the Forbidden Zone, ancient machines were awakening. Structures that had been dark for thousands of years began to glow with internal light. Energy patterns that had never been recorded by any species started flowing between the installations. The rescue fleet had succeeded in reaching the human ship, but they had also triggered something that no one understood. Deep in the heart of the zone, something vast and ancient was stirring to life, and its attention was focused on the small human freighter that had somehow survived where all others had failed. The rescue mission was about to become something much more significant than anyone had planned. The secrets of the Forbidden Zone were finally beginning to reveal themselves, and the galaxy would never be the same. Captain Sarah Chen had been watching the alien ships approach through the cracked viewport of the Lucky Break for the past hour. After 6 months trapped in the Forbidden Zone, she had almost given up hope of rescue. Now 3 ships were carefully moving toward her damaged freighter, and she could hardly believe they were real. Sarah was a typical human cargo hauler, middle-aged, practical, and used to dealing with mechanical problems rather than galactic mysteries. Her crew consisted of her engineer Mike Torres and navigator Lisa Park. All 3 had volunteered for this mission because it paid well, not because they wanted to make history. 6 months ago, they had been making a routine cargo run between human colonies when their experimental jump drive malfunctioned. The drive was supposed to cut their travel time in half, but instead it had deposited them in what their computer cheerfully called an unknown region of space. What happened next had been the most terrifying experience of Sarah's life. The moment they appeared in the Forbidden Zone, every alarm on the ship started screaming. Weapons that seemed to be made of pure energy began targeting their ship, trying to tear it apart at the molecular level. Sarah had done the only thing she could think of. She ordered full power to the shields and tried to find somewhere to hide. But the Lucky Break was not a warship. It was a civilian cargo hauler with basic defenses. The alien weapons should have destroyed them in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The weapons suddenly stopped firing. Now, as Captain Zethara's boarding shuttle approached the Lucky Break, Sarah prepared to finally learn what had happened to them. She activated the ship's external communication system and tried to contact the rescue fleet. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth cargo vessel Lucky Break," she transmitted. "We have been trapped here for 6 months and are in need of immediate assistance. Our life support systems are failing, and we have limited food and water remaining." The response came from Captain Zethara aboard the shuttle. "Captain Chen, this is Captain Zethara of the Galactic Hegemony vessel Inevitable Justice. We are here to evacuate you and your crew. Please prepare for emergency boarding procedures." Within an hour, Sarah and her crew were aboard the Inevitable Justice, receiving medical attention and being questioned by experts from a dozen different species. Dr. Lysandra was particularly interested in their story, and her glowing form flickered with excitement as Sarah described what had happened. "You say the weapons stopped firing suddenly?" Dr. Lysandra asked. "Did you do anything to cause this?" Did you activate any special equipment or send any signals? Sarah shook her head. We did not do anything. One moment we were about to be destroyed, and the next moment everything went quiet. The weapons just turned off. Mike Torres, the ship's engineer, had been studying the Lucky Break's sensor logs during their months in the zone. He presented his findings to the assembled scientists with nervous excitement. According to our instruments, Mike explained, the alien weapons did hit us, multiple times, but instead of destroying the ship, they seemed to scan us, like they were trying to figure out what we were. He brought up holographic displays showing the weapon impacts. Each hit was different. First they targeted our hull, then our engines, then our life support systems. But instead of doing damage, each scan seemed to make the weapons less aggressive. Dr. Lisa Andra studied the data with growing amazement. These are progenitor analysis beams, she said. They are designed to examine the quantum signature of any ship or crew that enters a protected zone. Based on what they find, the defense systems decide whether to destroy the intruder or allow them to pass. Lisa Park, the navigator, raised her hand hesitantly. Excuse me, but what are progenitors, and why would they care about us? The question caused an uncomfortable silence among the alien scientists. Dr. Lisa Andra's form dimmed as she considered how to answer. The progenitors were an ancient race that built most of the advanced technology in this galaxy, she finally explained. They disappeared millions of years ago, leaving behind automated systems that guard their installations. These systems are programmed to eliminate any threats to progenitor sites. She paused, looking directly at Sarah and her crew. The fact that they did not eliminate you suggests something extraordinary. According to the analysis beams, you are not considered threats. In fact, the readings suggest something that should be impossible. Captain Zeth Ara leaned forward in her chair. What do the readings suggest, Doctor? Dr. Lisa Andra's form flickered, nervously. The progenitor systems have classified the human crew as progenitors themselves. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Every person in the room stared at the three humans, who looked back with confusion and disbelief. That is impossible, Captain Zeth Ara said firmly. Humans are a young species. They have no advanced technology, no knowledge of progenitor systems. They cannot be progenitors. But Dr. Lisa Andra was already running new scans on the human crew members. Her equipment was far more advanced than anything on the Lucky Break, and the results it produced were disturbing. The quantum signatures match, she reported, her voice filled with wonder and fear. Not similar. Identical. According to every test I can run, these humans are genetically and quantum mechanically the same as the progenitor samples we have on file. Mike Torres looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at him. I do not understand, he said. Are you saying we are aliens? Because I was definitely born on Earth in a normal human hospital to normal human parents. Silent Song, the Void Walker representative, spoke for the first time since boarding the ship. The mechanical translator made their words sound flat and emotionless, but the content was anything but calm. The patterns repeat, Silent Song said. The ancient cycle begins again. The sleepers wake. The guardians remember their purpose. Dr. Lisa Andra turned to the mysterious alien. What do you mean? What cycle? But Silent Song had already turned away and would not answer any more questions. Dr. Lisa Andra continued her analysis of the human crew, but every test confirmed the same impossible result. By every measure available to galactic science, Sarah Chen, Mike Torres, and Lisa Park were identical to the progenitors who had built the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. This explains why you were not destroyed, Dr. Lisa Andra told them. The defense systems recognized you as their creators. They were programmed to protect you, not eliminate you. Sarah felt overwhelmed by the implications. But we do not know anything about this technology. We have never seen these machines before. How can we be the same as beings who disappeared millions of years ago? It was a question that Dr. Lysandra could not answer. The evidence was clear, but it made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about human history. As the rescue fleet prepared to leave the Forbidden Zone, more disturbing discoveries came to light. The progenitor installations throughout the zone were not just powering up. They were trying to communicate. Ancient transmission systems were sending signals toward Earth and every other human world in the galaxy. Whatever the presence of humans in the Forbidden Zone had awakened, it was now attempting to contact the rest of humanity. After millions of years of silence, the progenitor machines were trying to resume contact with their creators. The implications terrified every species in the galaxy. If humans really were progenitors, then the most primitive species in galactic civilization was actually the most advanced. The balance of power that had existed for centuries was about to be completely overturned. As the Lucky Break was taken in tow by the rescue fleet, Sarah looked back at the Forbidden Zone through the viewport. Ancient structures were glowing with new energy, and patterns of light were moving between them like the neurons in a vast mechanical brain. Something that had slept for millions of years was waking up, and it recognized her as family. The thought was both wonderful and terrifying. Sarah had joined this mission to earn money for her family back on Earth. Instead, she had stumbled into a mystery that would change the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Behind them, the Forbidden Zone continued to pulse with increasing energy, and across the galaxy, other progenitor sites began to respond to signals that only they could understand. The journey back to civilized space took 3 days, but news of the discovery leaked within hours. Despite Admiral Korthak's attempts to maintain secrecy, word spread throughout the galaxy that humans were somehow connected to the progenitors. By the time the rescue fleet reached the monitoring station, representatives from dozens of species were already waiting for them. Captain Sarah Chen found herself at the center of attention she never wanted. Every major news network in the galaxy wanted to interview her. Scientists demanded to study her and her crew. Government officials asked endless questions about Earth's history and human technology. Sarah tried to explain that she was just a cargo pilot who had gotten lost, but nobody seemed to believe her. The idea that humans might be the inheritors of the galaxy's most advanced civilization was too important to ignore. The immediate effects were felt across human space. Human colonies that had been treated as minor outposts suddenly found themselves under intense scrutiny. Some alien species began viewing humans as a potential threat, while others tried to form closer diplomatic relationships. The galactic hegemony faced an uncomfortable reality. For over a century, they had treated humans as junior partners in galactic civilization. Now it appeared that humans might actually be the senior partners, with a claim to technology that predated every other known species. Admiral Korthak called an emergency session of the Galactic Council to discuss the implications. The debate that followed was heated and sometimes angry, with different species taking very different positions on what the discovery meant. The Christek Union demanded that humans be immediately granted access to all progenitor sites so they could reclaim their inheritance. The Ethereal Coalition argued that humans should be studied extensively before any decisions were made. The Saurian hegemony wanted to restrict human access to progenitor technology until its safety could be guaranteed. Some species suggested something much more disturbing. If humans really were progenitors, what had caused them to lose their technology and knowledge? Had there been some kind of disaster that forced them to restart their civilization from the beginning? And if so, could it happen again? Dr. Lysandra spent weeks studying the data from the Forbidden Zone, trying to understand what had happened. Her research revealed disturbing patterns in progenitor sites across the galaxy. Every major progenitor installation shows signs of a deliberate shutdown, she reported to the council. The technology was not destroyed or damaged. It was carefully deactivated and placed in a preservation mode. She brought up holographic displays showing dozens of progenitor sites. The timing suggests a galaxy-wide evacuation that occurred approximately 2 million years ago. Whatever caused the progenitors to abandon their technology, it was serious enough that they were willing to give up everything they had built. The implications were terrifying. If the progenitors had abandoned their technology to escape some threat, what would happen when that technology began working again? And what had become of the progenitors themselves? Dr. Lysandra's research suggested an answer that no one wanted to hear. Based on the evidence, I believe the progenitors did not actually disappear. They deliberately reduced themselves to a primitive state and scattered across the galaxy to avoid detection. She looked directly at the human representatives in the chamber. Humans may not be descended from progenitors. They may actually be progenitors who chose to forget their own history. Captain Sarah Chen was still trying to process this information when it became clear that the situation was getting worse. Human ships had begun visiting previously forbidden progenitor sites, and the ancient defenses were allowing them to pass. Each visit caused more progenitor technology to activate. Reports came in from across the galaxy of ancient machines awakening, energy patterns appearing where none had existed for millennia, and structures that had been dormant for millions of years beginning to show signs of activity. The Void Walkers, through Silent Song, provided the most disturbing information of all. "The Great Hiding is ending," Silent Song announced to the Council. "The Sleepers wake. The ancient enemy stirs in the spaces between galaxies." When pressed for more details, Silent Song would only say that the progenitors had gone into hiding to avoid something that was not of this reality. The awakening of progenitor technology was sending signals across vast distances, potentially alerting this enemy to the location of the galaxy. As weeks passed, the effects of human contact with progenitor sites became more pronounced. Human crews reported strange dreams when near active progenitor installations. Some began demonstrating knowledge of technologies they had never learned. A few started speaking in languages that no human linguist could identify, but that matched linguistic patterns found in progenitor ruins. The situation reached a crisis point when a human exploration team on a distant world accidentally activated a progenitor manufacturing facility. The facility began producing devices that no one could identify, using principles that violated known physics. When alien scientists tried to study the devices, they found that only humans could operate them safely. Fear spread throughout the galaxy. Other species began to realize that humanity's humble appearance might be a facade. If humans really were progenitors, their friendly and cooperative behavior could be an act designed to lull other species into a false sense of security. Some extremist groups among various species began calling for preemptive action against humanity before they could fully reclaim their ancient power. These groups argued that once humans regained access to progenitor technology, they would dominate or eliminate all other life in the galaxy. The human government on Earth tried to calm these fears by offering to share any progenitor technology they discovered, but this only made other species more nervous. Why would the most advanced species in galactic history offer to share their technology unless they had some hidden agenda? Captain Sarah Chen watched these developments with growing concern. She had become an unwilling symbol of humanity's connection to the progenitors, and she received death threats from extremist groups almost daily. Her simple cargo run had turned into the most significant discovery in galactic history, and she wasn't sure she could handle the responsibility. The Lucky Break itself was moved to a classified research facility where scientists studied every component, looking for clues about how it had survived in the Forbidden Zone. But the ship remained stubbornly ordinary, a aging cargo hauler with no exotic modifications or hidden technology. Dr. Lysandra's continued research revealed more disturbing patterns. Progenitor sites across the galaxy were not just activating randomly, they were following a specific sequence, as if some vast program was slowly coming online. Each activation triggered responses from other sites. creating a network of communication that spanned the entire galaxy. "It's like watching a giant computer wake up," Dr. Lysiandra explained to Admiral Korthak. "Each progenitor site is a component in a larger system, and the system is becoming operational again." The Admiral asked the question everyone was afraid to voice. "What happens when the system is fully operational?" Dr. Lysiandra's form flickered with uncertainty. "I don't know, but based on the energy levels we're detecting, whatever this system was designed to do, it operates on a scale that could affect the entire galaxy." As the crisis deepened, humanity found itself in an impossible position. They were being blamed for awakening forces they didn't understand, pressured to take responsibility for technology they couldn't control, and expected to have answers to questions they had never thought to ask. Sarah Chen often found herself staring at the stars, wondering what her ancestors had been thinking when they chose to forget their own history. Had they been trying to protect the galaxy from something, or had they been protecting something from the galaxy? In the depths of space, ancient machines continued their patient work, following programs written millions of years ago by beings who had chosen to become human. The Forbidden Zone pulsed with increasing energy, and across the galaxy, other progenitor sites responded to signals that carried messages no living being could understand. The galaxy stood at the edge of a new age, but no one knew whether it would be an age of wonder or terror. The only certainty was that nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity had reclaimed its birthright, but the price of that inheritance was still being calculated. In the end, the most frightening thing was not what humans might become, but what they had been running from for so long, and whether it was still out there, waiting for them to remember who they really were. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking at the hologram floating in front of him. The blue planet called Earth spun slowly in the display. It looked so small and harmless. He could not understand why the High Command had sent his entire fleet to deal with such a weak world. "Sir, we have finished studying the planet," said his second officer, Captain Veltar. "The beings there are very primitive. They have only basic rockets and simple weapons, no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel. Their strongest weapons use chemical explosives." Kethvar laughed. In his 40 years of military service, he had conquered hundreds of worlds for the Zephyrian supremacy. His fleet of 500 warships had destroyed entire star systems. Each of his ships was over 3 miles long and carried enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The humans had nothing that could even scratch the paint on his smallest vessel. "How boring," he said. "The Supremacy sends the 47th Conquest Fleet to deal with children playing with toys." The Zephyrian Supremacy ruled 40,000 star systems. For 500 years, they had been the strongest force in the galaxy. No species had ever defeated them in battle. Most worlds surrendered the moment they saw a Supremacy fleet. The few that fought back were crushed within hours. Kethvar walked to the main viewing screen. In the distance, he could see the other ships in his fleet. Massive dreadnoughts with weapons that could destroy cities. Fast attack cruisers that moved like deadly shadows. Support ships carrying enough troops to occupy a dozen worlds. The humans had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we are receiving radio signals from the planet," reported the communications officer. "They are trying to talk to us." "Put it on the main speakers," Kethvar ordered. A human voice filled the bridge. The words were strange and clumsy, but the translator made them clear. "Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourselves. We wish for peaceful contact." The bridge crew laughed. Earth Defense Command? What could they possibly defend against? Their strongest military units were metal vehicles that crawled on the ground. Their flying machines were slow and weak. They had no space warships at all. "Open a channel," Kethvar commanded. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Supremacy 47th Conquest Fleet. Your world is now under our control. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick." There was a long silence from Earth. Then the human voice spoke again. We don't understand. We want peace. Why are you threatening us? Kethvar smiled. They were already begging. This would be easier than he thought. Because you exist in space that belongs to the supremacy. You will surrender your world and serve our empire, or we will destroy you. You have 1 hour to decide. He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. Begin the intimidation display. I want every ship to charge their weapons. Let them see what real power looks like. Across the fleet, massive energy weapons began to glow. The ships moved into attack formation. Their hulls gleamed with deadly purpose. Any civilization would be terrified by such a display of force. But Admiral Kethvar did not know that humans had been watching the galaxy for much longer than anyone realized. Deep in hidden bases on Earth's moon and scattered through the asteroid belt, other humans were having very different conversations. Commander Sarah Chen sat in a control room buried deep beneath the lunar surface. Around her, dozens of technicians worked at advanced computer stations. The room hummed with energy from machines that the supremacy would not understand. Ma'am, the alien fleet has moved past Jupiter, reported Lieutenant Wong. All ships are showing standard Zephyrian energy signatures. No unusual weapons or defenses. Chen nodded. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing for this day. They had found crashed alien ships and studied their technology. They had listened to supremacy communications and learned about their empire. Most importantly, they had developed weapons and defenses that worked on principles the aliens had never imagined. How many ships? She asked. 500 capital ships, sir. Standard supremacy conquest fleet. Chen almost felt sorry for them. The Zephyrians thought they were so advanced, so powerful. They believed their energy shields and plasma weapons made them unbeatable. They had no idea that human scientists had discovered how to manipulate the basic forces that held the universe together. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Launch the sensor. Rockets. On Earth's surface, ancient chemical rockets lifted off from launch pads around the world. To any observer, they looked like desperate attempts to fight back with primitive weapons. The Zephyrian fleet barely noticed them, but these rockets carried no weapons. Instead, they held the most advanced scanning equipment humans had ever built. As they flew toward the alien fleet, they mapped every ship, analyzed every energy pattern, and identified every weakness. The data flowed back to Chen's command center in seconds. Quantum computers processed the information and created detailed battle plans. Every Zephyrian ship now had a target painted on it by weapons they could not detect. Ma'am, Admiral Harrison is requesting permission to make contact, said Wong. Chen smiled. It was time for the aliens to meet the real human military. Patch him through. On the main screen, Admiral Harrison appeared. He was an older man with gray hair and cold eyes. Behind him, Chen could see the bridge of humanity's most advanced warship. The Zephyrians had no idea it existed. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Fleet, he said in a calm voice. Commander Chen, are we ready? All weapon platforms are online, sir. Dark matter cannons are charged. Quantum torpedo bays are loaded. Gravitational distortion fields are active. Harrison nodded. Then let's introduce ourselves to our guests. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar was growing impatient. The human rockets had flown past his fleet without attacking. They seemed to be heading toward the outer planets, probably trying to run away. Sir, we are receiving another transmission from Earth, said the communications officer. Put it on screen. This time, instead of a frightened human voice, a clear image appeared. A human in a military uniform stood on what was clearly the bridge of a warship. Behind him, advanced technology gleamed. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Fleet, the human said. You have entered our system without permission. You have threatened our world. You have one chance to leave peacefully. Kethvar stared at the image. The background looked like the bridge of an advanced starship. But that was impossible. The humans had no such technology. "This is some kind of trick," he said to his officers. "They are trying to fool us with fake images." But as he spoke, his sensor officer's face went pale. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. They're everywhere." Kethvar looked at his sensors. For the first time in his career, he felt a cold touch of fear. The energy readings were impossible. Nothing should be able to generate that much power without being detected. "Where are these readings coming from?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The sources are hidden somehow. Our sensors can't get a clear lock." Admiral Harrison's voice continued from the communication screen. "You have 10 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that, we will consider you a hostile force." Kethavar's pride would not let him back down. "You dare threaten the supremacy? We have 500 warships. You have nothing but empty words." Harrison looked sad. "Then you have made your choice." The transmission ended. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then every alarm on the Zephyrian flagship began to scream at once. The Zephyrian fleet moved closer to Earth like a pack of metal wolves. Admiral Kethvar watched the blue planet grow larger on his screens. Soon his ships would be close enough to demonstrate their power. A few destroyed cities would make the humans understand their situation. "Sir, the human rockets are still flying toward the outer planets," reported his tactical officer. "Should we destroy them?" Kethvar waved his hand dismissively. "Let them run. Those pathetic chemical rockets cannot hurt us. Focus on the planet. I want to see their military installations." What the Admiral did not know was that those rockets were not running away. They were taking very detailed pictures of his entire fleet. Advanced cameras and sensors built by human scientists recorded everything about the Zephyrian ships. Their size, their weapons, their shield frequencies, even the way their engines worked. Deep inside a hidden base on the far side of Earth's moon, Commander Sarah Chen watched the data flow across her screens. The information was being processed by quantum computers that could think faster than any biological brain. "Target analysis complete," announced Dr. Martinez, the chief scientist. "We have identified the command structure of their fleet. The largest ship in the center is their flagship. If we remove it first, the others will be confused." Chen nodded. The plan was working perfectly. For decades, humans had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. Crashed ships, broken equipment, even intercepted communications had taught them about supremacy technology. The aliens used energy shields and plasma weapons. They were powerful, but they followed rules that humans had learned to break. "What about their defenses?" Chen asked. "Standard energy barriers," replied Dr. Martinez. "They protect against heat, radiation, and kinetic impacts. But they cannot stop our dark matter weapons. Their shields work by deflecting energy and matter. Dark matter passes right through." Chen smiled. The Zephyrians thought they understood physics. They had built their empire using the same basic technologies for centuries. But humans had discovered things that went beyond normal matter and energy. They had learned to use the invisible forces that held galaxies together. "Status report on our weapon platforms," she ordered. Lieutenant Wong checked his displays. "All dark matter cannons are online and targeted. Quantum torpedo launchers are loaded and ready. Gravitational distortion generators are spinning up to full power." The weapon platforms were hidden throughout the solar system. Some were built inside asteroids that looked like ordinary rocks. Others were concealed in the shadows of planets and moons. A few were actually invisible, using technology that bent light around them. Each platform carried weapons that could destroy entire fleets. The dark matter cannons fired streams of invisible particles that could pass through any known shield. When these particles hit normal matter, they caused it to simply disappear. Not explode, not melt, just cease to exist. The quantum torpedoes were even more deadly. They traveled through folded space, appearing directly inside enemy ships without having to cross the distance between. Each torpedo contained enough antimatter to destroy a city, but the most terrifying weapons were the gravitational distortion generators. These machines could make gravity itself into a weapon. They could create black holes, crush ships with invisible force, or tear them apart with gravitational waves. "Ma'am, Admiral Harrison is ready to make contact," reported the communications officer. Chen looked at the main screen. The Zephyrian fleet was now passing Mars. They would be in Earth's orbital space within hours. It was time to give them one. Last chance. Connect me to Admiral Harrison. The screen showed the bridge of the TDS Prometheus, humanity's most advanced warship. Admiral Harrison stood at the command station, his gray hair neat and his uniform crisp. Behind him, his crew worked. At stations filled with technology the Supremacy had never seen. "Commander Chen, are your people ready?" Harrison asked. "All weapon platforms report ready, sir. We can engage at your command." Harrison looked sad. "I had hoped they would be more reasonable. Send the warning." The transmission beam reached the Zephyrian flagship in seconds. Admiral Kethvar saw a human in a military uniform appear on his main screen. The background showed the bridge of what looked like an advanced starship, but that had to be fake. The humans could not have built such technology. "This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said. "You have entered our system without permission. You have threatened our world. You have one chance to leave peacefully." Kethvar laughed. "Terran Defense Fleet? You mean those rockets we saw flying away? This is obviously some kind of recording made in a fake room. You cannot fool us with lies." But even as he spoke, his sensor operators were reporting strange readings. Energy signatures were appearing all over the system. Massive amounts of power were being generated by sources they could not identify. "Sir, these readings don't match any known technology," reported his chief scientist. "The power levels are impossible. Nothing should be able to generate this much energy without massive installations." Kethvar ignored the reports. His pride would not let him believe that primitive humans could threaten the mighty Supremacy. "Continue the advance. Prepare to demonstrate our power." On the communication screen, Admiral Harrison continued speaking. "You have 10 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that, we will consider you a hostile force." "You dare threaten the Supremacy?" Kethvar shouted. "We have 500 warships. You have nothing but empty words." Harrison's expression grew sad. "Then you have made your choice." The transmission ended. For a moment, the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship was quiet. Then every alarm began to sound at once. "Sir! Massive energy spike detected!" screamed the sensor operator. "Multiple contacts appearing throughout the system." On the tactical display, red dots began appearing everywhere, hundreds of them, surrounding the Zephyrian fleet from all directions. Each dot represented a weapon platform more advanced than anything the Supremacy had ever built. "Where did they come from?" Kethvar demanded. "Unknown, sir. They seem to have been hidden somehow. Our sensors showed nothing there before." Kethvar stared at the display in growing horror. The red dots were not just scattered randomly. They formed a perfect sphere around his fleet. Every ship was targeted by multiple platforms. There was no escape route. "How many?" he whispered. "Over 300 weapon platforms, sir, and they're all pointed at us." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kethvar felt true fear. The humans had not been running away. They had been setting a trap, and he had flown his entire fleet right into it. "Emergency signals to all ships," he ordered. "Maximum shields. Prepare for combat." But deep in his heart, he already knew it was too late. The humans had been planning this for much longer than anyone had realized. They had studied Supremacy, technology, and built weapons specifically designed to defeat it. The trap was set, and there was nowhere to run. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral," reported the communications officer. Harrison's face appeared on screen once more. This time there was no sadness in his eyes. only cold determination. Admiral Kethvar, you had your chance. Now you will learn why Earth has remained unconquered. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, every person on the bridge could hear their own heartbeat. Outside, 300 hidden weapons turned toward the Zephyrian fleet. The battle was about to begin, and it would be over in seconds. The battle lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. Admiral Kethvar had time to see the first flash of light before his universe ended. Across space, hundreds of hidden weapon platforms fired at once, but these were not the energy beams or missiles that the Supremacy understood. These were weapons that worked on the deepest levels of reality itself. Dark matter cannons released streams of invisible particles that passed through the Zephyrian shields like they were not there. The shields had been designed to stop energy and normal matter. They could deflect plasma beams and kinetic projectiles. But dark matter was different. It barely interacted with normal matter at all, until human scientists had learned to control it. When the dark matter streams hit the alien ships, something terrible happened. The particles disrupted the bonds that held atoms together. Metal hulls simply ceased to exist. Not melted, not vaporized, but deleted from reality. Entire sections of ships disappeared, leaving perfect spherical holes where armor plating had been. The Supremacy's mighty dreadnoughts, each 3 miles long and carrying thousands of crew members, began to vanish piece by piece. Their massive hulls developed holes that grew larger with each second. Air rushed out into space, carrying screaming aliens with it. But the dark matter cannons were only the beginning. Quantum torpedo launchers fired their deadly cargo through folded space. The torpedoes did not travel from the weapon platforms to their targets. Instead, they simply appeared inside the enemy ships, bypassing all shields and armor. Each torpedo contained enough antimatter to power a small city or destroy a large building. When antimatter met normal matter inside the Zephyrian ships, the results were devastating. Pure energy explosions tore through vital systems. Engine rooms became blazing infernos. Command bridges filled with lethal radiation. Ships that had conquered worlds across the galaxy were gutted from the inside in seconds. Admiral Kethvar watched, his fleet die around him. The ship next to his flagship, a massive battlecruiser called the Eternal Victory, simply folded in on itself as gravitational weapons twisted space around it. The ship's hull crumpled like paper as artificial gravity fields compressed it into a ball of scrap metal. "Shields! Maximum power to shields!" he screamed. "Sir, our shields are at full power, but they're not stopping anything," replied his defensive systems officer. "These weapons are passing right through our barriers." The admiral stared at his tactical display in horror. Red symbols showed his ships being destroyed faster than the computer could update. 500 warships reduced to debris in seconds. His entire fleet, the pride of the Supremacy, was being erased from existence. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His chief scientist, an old Zephyrian named Velthok, looked up from his readings with wide eyes. "Sir, these humans, they're using weapons that operate outside normal physics. They're manipulating fundamental forces that we barely understand." A gravitational wave hit the flagship, shaking the massive ship like a toy. The artificial gravity inside flickered, making everyone float for a moment before slamming back down. Warning lights flashed as the ship's structure groaned under impossible stresses. "Sir, hull breach on decks 12 through 30, reported damage control. "We're losing atmosphere on 15 levels." Kethvar felt his world collapsing around him. In 40 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had weapons that made his most advanced technology look like stone tools. They had studied the Supremacy's weaknesses and built weapons specifically designed to exploit them. "Emergency transmission to Supremacy Command," he ordered. Tell them we were wrong about the humans." But even as he spoke, he knew the message would never be sent. A quantum torpedo had materialized inside the ship's communication center, destroying all long-range transmitters. The flagship was cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Another gravitational wave hit the ship, this one stronger than the first. The hull began to crack along stress lines. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as entire sections were exposed to space. The ship that had been his pride and home for 20 years was dying around him. "Sir, we've lost main power," shouted the engineering officer. "Life support is failing. We have maybe 10 minutes of air left." 10 minutes. The admiral looked at his tactical display one more time. Of his 500 ships, only a handful remained, and they were dying fast. The humans had achieved something that should have been impossible. They had destroyed an entire supremacy fleet without losing a single ship of their own. "Sir, incoming transmission," reported the communications officer, his voice shaking. Admiral Harrison appeared on the main screen. Behind him, his bridge was calm and quiet. No damage, no casualties, no signs of battle at all. He looked at Kethvar with something that might have been pity. "Admiral, your fleet is finished," Harrison said calmly, "but you still live. I offer you this chance to send a message to your empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them why they should leave Earth alone." Kethvar felt his pride crumble. This human admiral was offering him mercy, even after destroying everything he commanded. But what message could he send? Who would believe that primitive humans had annihilated the 47th Conquest Fleet? They will not believe," he said weakly. "Then make them believe," Harrison replied. "Your people need to understand that humanity is not their enemy, but we will not be their victims either. Tell them to find another path." The transmission ended. Around Kethvar, his flagship continued to die. Systems failed one by one. The lights dimmed as power ran out. In the distance, he could see the last few ships of his fleet being destroyed by weapons that should not exist. With trembling hands, he activated the emergency beacon. It was a simple device, designed to record a final message if a ship was about to be destroyed. The message would be found eventually by supremacy search teams. "This is Admiral Kethvar of the 47th Conquest Fleet," he said into the recorder. "We came to conquer a primitive world called Earth. We were wrong. These humans, they are not primitives. They are something far more dangerous. They have weapons that can destroy matter itself. They can bend gravity like we bend metal. They can make their attacks appear inside our ships." He paused as another section of the ship was torn away by gravitational forces. Through the gap, he could see Earth in the distance, still blue and peaceful. "The fleet is destroyed, all ships lost. The humans defeated us in seconds. Tell the Emperor. Tell him these beings are not to be underestimated. They are predators disguised as prey. Approach them with respect, or do not approach them at all." The recording device shut down as the ship's power finally failed. In the darkness, Kethvar waited for the end. Around him, the last remnants of the 47th Conquest Fleet drifted as silent debris. The battle was over. The mighty supremacy had learned a lesson that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer hiding. Far away on Earth, Admiral Harrison stood on his bridge watching the last enemy ship break apart. His crew worked quietly at their stations, already beginning the cleanup operations. Automated systems would collect the debris and ensure that no alien technology fell into the wrong hands. "Sir, all enemy vessels destroyed," reported his tactical officer. "No survivors detected." Harrison nodded sadly. He had hoped it would not come to this. But the supremacy had chosen the path of conquest, and humanity had chosen the path of survival. "Send word to Earth Command," he ordered. "The threat is eliminated. Begin Phase 2 of the contingency plan." Phase 2 would ensure that this victory was not just a single battle, but the beginning of a new era. The galaxy would learn that Earth was protected by more than just luck. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human guardianship had begun. Emperor Zalthek sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Supremacy's capital world. The massive chamber around him was filled with his most trusted advisors, military commanders, and scientists. But today, the usual confident voices were replaced by worried whispers and frightened silence. On the hologram table in front of them, the impossible played over and over again. The brief recording from Admiral Kethvar's flagship showed the 47th Conquest Fleet being destroyed in seconds. 500 of the Supremacy's finest warships simply erased from existence by weapons that should not work. "Play it again," the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. The hologram showed the same horrifying scene. Ships disappearing piece by piece as invisible forces tore them apart. Gravitational waves crushing massive hulls like paper. Explosions appearing. Inside vessels without any projectiles crossing space. In 4.7 seconds, an entire conquest fleet was reduced to drifting debris. General Mordan, the Supremacy's highest military commander, stood with his head bowed. "Your Majesty, we have confirmed the destruction. Search teams found the debris field exactly where Admiral Kethvar reported. No survivors, no intact technology to study." Emperor Zalthek had ruled the Supremacy for over a century. In that time, his forces had conquered thousands of worlds. No species had ever defeated them in open battle. Some had surrendered quickly, others had fought bravely but futilely. A few had hidden or run away, but none had ever achieved total victory against a Supremacy fleet. Until now. "How?" the Emperor asked. "How did these humans do this?" Chief Scientist Velmore stepped forward, his multiple arms gesturing at data displays. "Your Majesty, we have analyzed the limited recordings. The humans appear to have weaponized fundamental forces that we consider impossible to control. Dark matter manipulation, gravitational distortion, quantum tunneling effects. Are you telling me that these primitives have mastered sciences that our greatest minds consider theoretical?" "It appears so, Your Majesty. Their weapons operate on principles that bypass all known defensive technologies. Our shields, our armor, our electronic countermeasures. None of them can stop attacks that work at the subatomic level." Emperor Zalthek stood from his throne, his tall form casting shadows across the chamber. For 500 years, the Supremacy had grown by conquest. They found weaker species and absorbed them into the empire. It was simple, efficient, and profitable. But these humans had changed everything. "What do our intelligence services know about this species?" he demanded. Intelligence Director Colwen activated a new hologram. Images of Earth appeared, showing cities, military bases, and space installations. Our previous reports indicated a primitive civilization with basic technology. Chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, simple electronics. We detected no energy shields, no advanced alloys, no faster-than-light capability. Then where did these weapons come from? "Unknown, Your Majesty. Either our intelligence was completely wrong, or these humans have been hiding their true capabilities for decades, possibly centuries." The Emperor felt a chill run through his body. If the humans had been hiding advanced technology, what else might they have concealed? How many other species in the galaxy possessed secret weapons that could destroy Supremacy fleets? "Sir, we have another problem," General Mordan said quietly. "Word of the defeat is spreading throughout the Empire. Our subject species are beginning to ask questions." Emperor Zalthek understood immediately. The Supremacy ruled through fear and the belief that resistance was impossible. If species learned that the mighty Supremacy could be defeated, rebellions would start everywhere. "How bad is it?" he asked. 12 worlds have stopped sending tribute shipments. 6 colonial governors report increasing unrest. 3 star systems have gone completely silent. As if summoned by their conversation, an aide rushed into the chamber. "Your Majesty, urgent message from the Outer Rim territories. The Cathari system has declared independence." They are refusing all supremacy authority. The Emperor closed his eyes. The Cathari were a proud species that had been conquered only 50 years ago. They had never fully accepted supremacy rule, and now they saw an opportunity. "What did they say exactly?" he asked. The aide read from a data pad. "Earth endures. The supremacy bleeds. Freedom is possible." That was their entire message. Your Majesty. Emperor Zaltek felt his empire beginning to crack. The humans had not just destroyed a fleet. They had destroyed the myth of supremacy invincibility. Across the galaxy, species that had been forced into submission were remembering what freedom meant. "Your Majesty," Intelligence Director Colwen spoke up, "we have detected encrypted transmissions being sent to multiple star systems. The source appears to be somewhere in Earth's solar system." "What kind of transmissions?" "Video recordings of the battle, along with messages encouraging resistance. The humans are actively spreading word of their victory." General Mordaunt stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we must respond with force. If we allow this challenge to go unanswered, the entire empire could collapse. I recommend immediate mobilization of the First and Second Imperial fleets." "To do what?" the Emperor snapped. "Send more ships to be destroyed by weapons we don't understand? How many fleets are you willing to lose before you admit we are outmatched?" The chamber fell silent. No one in the Supremacy's leadership had ever heard their Emperor admit weakness before. Chief Scientist Velmore cleared his throat, nervously. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact." "Diplomacy?" General Mordaunt snarled. "The Supremacy does not negotiate with inferior species." "Are they inferior?" Velmore asked quietly. "They destroyed our fleet in seconds. They possess technology we cannot match. By what measure are they inferior to us?" Emperor Zaltek returned to his throne, suddenly feeling very old. The weight of 5 centuries of conquest pressed down on him. The Supremacy had grown powerful by being the strongest force in every conflict. But what happened when they met someone stronger? "Show me the human admiral's message again," he commanded. The hologram displayed Admiral Harrison's final transmission to Admiral Kethvar. The human looked calm and controlled, even while destroying an entire fleet. His words were simple and direct. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them why they should leave Earth alone." He offered mercy, the Emperor realized. Even after winning completely, he let our admiral send a warning message. "Yes, Your Majesty," Intelligence Director Colwen confirmed. "The humans could have destroyed the flagship immediately. Instead, they gave Admiral Kethvar time to record his final report." Emperor Zaltek studied the human admiral's face. There was no hatred there, no desire for conquest, only a quiet determination to protect his people. It was not the expression of a bloodthirsty warrior, but of a guardian. "They are not like us," he said slowly. "They did not attack our worlds or demand our surrender. They simply defended their own territory." "Your Majesty," General Mordaunt protested, "they are still a threat to the Empire." "No," the Emperor said firmly. "We are a threat to them, and they have made it clear what happens to threats." For the first time in centuries, Emperor Zaltek faced a choice that could not be solved by force. He could escalate the conflict and risk losing everything, or he could try something the Supremacy had never done before. He could admit that someone else was stronger. "Prepare a diplomatic vessel," he ordered. "Send envoys to Earth. It is time the Supremacy learned to negotiate." The chamber erupted in shocked voices, but the Emperor raised his hand for silence. Across the galaxy, rebellions were spreading as species learned that the Supremacy could be defeated. The old way of ruling through fear was ending. A new age was beginning, whether the Supremacy was ready or not. And at the center of it all, a small blue planet called Earth waited to see what the galaxy would choose: cooperation or destruction. 6 months after the destruction of the 47th Conquest Fleet, a single Zephyrian vessel approached Earth's solar system. Unlike the massive warships that had come before, this ship was small and elegant, painted in the white and gold colors of diplomacy. It carried no weapons, only a message of peace and a request to talk. Admiral Harrison stood on the observation deck of Sanctuary Station, a massive space facility that humans had built in the asteroid belt. Through the transparent walls, he could see the diplomatic ship approaching slowly, its engines barely glowing. Behind him, representatives from 12 different alien species waited nervously for the negotiations to begin. These aliens were not enemies. They were former subjects of the Supremacy, who had declared independence after learning of humanity's victory. The Cathari, with their proud warrior culture. The gentle Vorthak, who had been enslaved for 3 centuries. The insectoid Gelti, whose homeworld had been strip-mined for resources. All of them had come to Earth seeking protection and alliance. "Admiral, the Supremacy vessel is requesting permission to dock," reported Captain Morrison, Harrison's aide. "Grant permission," Harrison replied, "but maintain full security protocols. I want every sensor watching them." The diplomatic meeting would take place in a neutral chamber designed specifically for interspecies contact. The room had adjustable gravity, atmospheric controls, and translation systems that could handle dozens of languages. Most importantly, it was surrounded by the same defensive systems that had destroyed the Conquest Fleet. Ambassador Velkoth of the Supremacy entered the chamber with a small group of advisors. He was a tall, elegant being with silver skin and multiple arms, dressed in robes that marked his high rank. But his usual proud bearing was replaced by careful humility. He had seen the recordings of what happened to warships that threatened Earth. Admiral Harrison greeted him with formal courtesy. "Ambassador, welcome to human space. I hope we can find a peaceful solution to our differences." Velkoth bowed deeply, a gesture that would have been unthinkable from a Supremacy representative just months ago. "Admiral Harrison, I bring greetings from Emperor Zaltek and the sincere desire for peace between our peoples." The negotiations took place over several days. The Supremacy had prepared carefully, studying everything they could learn about human culture and psychology. They had come not as conquerors, but as petitioners seeking to avoid further conflict. "Let me be clear about our position," Harrison said during the first formal session. "Humanity does not seek to conquer or rule other species. We want to be left alone to develop in peace. But we will not tolerate threats to Earth or attacks on defenseless civilizations." Ambassador Velkoth nodded carefully. "We understand your position, Admiral. The Emperor has authorized me to discuss significant concessions to ensure peaceful coexistence." The talks were complex and sometimes heated. The Supremacy was being forced to give up systems they had controlled for centuries. 12 star systems would be granted full independence under human protection. Enslaved species would be freed. Tribute payments would end. But the most important agreement was the establishment of protected zones throughout the galaxy. These would be regions of space where younger civilizations could develop without interference from advanced species. Any attempt to conquer or exploit these worlds would be met by human intervention. "You are asking us to abandon the principles that built our empire," Velkoth said during one difficult session. "We are asking you to evolve beyond them," Harrison replied firmly. "The age of conquest is ending. Species that adapt to cooperation will prosper. Those that cling to domination will face the consequences." To demonstrate their commitment, the humans shared some of their defensive technologies with the freed species. Not the most advanced weapons, but shield designs and detection systems that could protect against most threats. It was a clear message. Earth would help those who chose freedom over submission. The final signing ceremony took place on Sanctuary Station, with representatives from dozens of species present. Ambassador Velkoth and Admiral Harrison stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by beings who had once been enemies or subjects of the Supremacy. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Harrison announced to the assembled crowd. No longer will the galaxy be ruled by fear and conquest. From this day forward, every species has the right to choose its own path. The treaty was officially called the Terran Accords, but history would remember it as the document that ended the Age of Empires. The supremacy would remain a major power, but they could no longer expand through force. Other species gained the protection they needed to govern themselves, but the real change went deeper than any written agreement. The defeat of the 47th Conquest Fleet had shattered the belief that advanced technology guaranteed victory. Species across the galaxy began to question their relationships with more powerful neighbors. Some sought independence, others formed new alliances based on mutual benefit rather than domination. Commander Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral, oversaw the expansion of humanity's Guardian Fleet. New ships were built using the most advanced technology Earth could produce. They patrolled the protected zones, ensuring that the treaties were enforced and that peaceful species could develop without fear. The supremacy tested the new boundaries several times in the first year. Each time, human ships appeared to enforce the agreements. The aliens learned quickly that humanity's commitment to protection was absolute. No conquered species would face extinction while Earth endured. Other major powers in the galaxy watched these developments with growing concern. The hegemony, the collective, and the Star Republic all realized that the balance of power had shifted permanently. None of them wanted to test humanity's defenses directly, but they began their own preparations for a changed galaxy. 5 years after the battle, Admiral Harrison stood once again on Sanctuary Station's observation deck. But now, instead of looking at a single diplomatic ship, he watched a massive spaceport filled with vessels from hundreds of species. Traders, diplomats, scientists, and refugees all came to human space seeking opportunity and protection. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Andromeda expedition," reported his communications officer. Harrison smiled. The expedition was humanity's first attempt to explore beyond the Milky Way galaxy. With their local region secured, humans were ready to discover what lay beyond the stars they knew. "Put it through," he ordered. The transmission showed Commander Kim aboard the exploration ship TDS Pioneer. Behind her, unknown stars gleamed through the viewports of humanity's most advanced vessel. "Admiral, we have made contact with 3 new civilizations in the Andromeda galaxy," Kim reported. "All of them are peaceful and interested in trade and cultural exchange. No signs of hostile empires or conquest fleets." Harrison nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was vast, and there was always room for growth and discovery. But now that growth would happen through cooperation rather than conquest. The Age of Empires was ending, replaced by an age of alliance and mutual support. In the years that followed, the protected zones became centers of innovation and prosperity. Species that had been held back by supremacy rule began to flourish. New technologies were developed through cooperation between multiple civilizations. Art, literature, and scientific knowledge flowed freely between worlds. The supremacy itself began to change. Younger generations of Zephyrians questioned the old ways of conquest and domination. Reform movements gained power in their government. Some supremacy worlds even applied to join the protected zone system, seeking the prosperity that came with peaceful cooperation. Admiral Harrison, now elderly but still sharp, often reflected on how the galaxy had changed. The humans had never wanted to be galactic guardians. They had simply wanted to be left alone. But when forced to defend themselves, they had discovered that protection required vigilance and strength. The warning that Admiral Kethvar had tried to send to his empire had proven true in ways he never expected. Humanity was indeed predators, disguised as prey. But they were a very specific type of predator, one that hunted those who threatened the innocent and protected those who could not protect themselves. Earth's blue skies still looked peaceful from space, but now they were watched over by guardian fleets that ensured no species would ever again face the choice between submission and extinction. The galaxy had learned its lesson, and those who remembered would ensure it was never forgotten. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human guardianship would last as long as threats remained in the darkness between the stars. And in that darkness, other predators watched and waited, planning their own moves in the endless game of galactic power. But that would be a story for another day.